Your bacon turned grey in 6 days. A Neanderthal preserved an entire deer haunch for 6 months, using nothing but smoke and thyme. What did a cave dweller with a stone knife understand about meat that your refrigerator doesn't? You bought that bacon last week. Premium thick cut, the expensive stuff. Today you open the package and there's a smell. Something sour and chemical. The edges look wrong, greyish instead of pink. By tomorrow it'll be slimy, and you'll throw away $8 worth of meat that couldn't survive a single week in a cold box specifically designed to preserve food. Travel back 50,000 years to what's now southern France. A Neanderthal hunting party just killed 3 red deer in a single autumn afternoon. That's roughly 600 pounds of meat, enough protein to feed their group for months. But here's the problem. They have no refrigeration, no plastic wrap, no preservatives with chemical names you can't pronounce. Fresh meat in moderate temperatures rots completely within 3 days. They should lose 90% of this food to decay. Except they didn't. Archaeological evidence from Grotta du Lazaret shows these people were storing meat successfully through entire winters. Some of that venison was still edible 6 months after the kill. How is that possible when your bacon can't make it through a single week? The answer isn't what you'd expect. It's not about the meat itself. A deer from 50,000 years ago and a pig from last Tuesday have nearly identical muscle tissue. The difference is what happened next. Your bacon went through a process optimized for profit. Their venison went through a process optimized for survival. And the gap between those two goals explains everything wrong with modern meat. Let's start with what's actually killing your bacon. The moment you open that package, you're introducing it to an invisible army. Bacteria that were waiting, dormant, suddenly have access to oxygen. They begin multiplying immediately. Pseudomonas, Lactobacillus, Bruchophrix thermosfacta. These aren't exotic pathogens, they're the standard crew that colonizes any piece of refrigerated meat once the seal breaks. Fresh meat has what scientists call a water activity level of about 0.98. That number represents how much moisture is available for bacteria to use. Pure water scores 1.0. Your bacon sits around 0.96 to 0.97 even when cold. That's plenty of available water for microbes to thrive. Most spoilage bacteria need at least 0.95 to grow. Your premium thick-cut bacon is basically a swimming pool for organisms that want to turn protein into rot. But there's something worse happening that you can't see. Pick up that package and really look at the ingredient list. You'll see water listed, not moisture that naturally exists in pork. Added water. Industrial processors inject bacon with salt water using machines equipped with dozens of needles. They call this enhancing the product. What they're actually doing is increasing the weight you pay for. Modern bacon can contain 15 to 25% added water by weight. You just spent $2 on tap water that's been labeled as meat. That injected water isn't just stealing your money, it's creating the perfect environment for bacterial growth. Every drop of added moisture raises the water activity level, giving spoilage organisms more resources to multiply. The industry knows this. They've known it since the 1950s when mechanical injection became standard practice. But here's the thing, before injection technology, traditional curing made bacon lose about 25% of its weight through drying. That weight loss was expensive, so they found a way to not just prevent the loss, but add weight back. They turned a preservation method into a profit method. Now look at what a Neanderthal did with that deer haunch. Within hours of the kill, while the meat was still warm, they cut it into strips and packed it with something they'd gathered from dried lake beds. Salt, coarse, mineral-rich salt pressed into every surface of the flesh. This wasn't about flavor, this was chemical warfare. Salt is a weapon against decay. When you pack meat in salt, osmosis begins immediately. Water inside the muscle cells gets pulled toward the salt crystals on the surface. The cells shrink. The liquid that escapes carries blood, bacteria, and the nutrients microbes need to survive. Over the next week, that deer meat would lose 15% of its weight, all of it water draining away into the salt bed below. But they didn't stop there. After a week, they scraped off the wet, bloody salt and applied fresh, dry salt. Then they did it again. By the third application, the meat was firm, dark, and dry to the touch. If you measured the water activity now, it would be around 0.92. Low enough to stop most bacteria, but not quite safe enough to last months. That's where the smoke entered the process. And what happened next in those cave ceilings reveals something modern food science spent decades trying to replicate, something your bacon lost completely. Because smoke isn't just flavoring. When wood burns at specific temperatures, it becomes a chemical arsenal. And understanding what those chemicals do to meat explains why Neanderthals could preserve food for half a year, while your refrigerated bacon dies in less than a week. The smoke that drifted up from those cave fires contained over 200 different chemical compounds. Most were harmless, some added flavor, but a handful were straight poison to bacteria. When wood burns at low temperatures below 80 degrees Fahrenheit, something remarkable happens. The lignin inside the wood, the compound that gives trees their rigid structure, starts breaking apart. It doesn't combust, it fractures into smaller molecules called phenols. You've encountered phenols before. They're the active ingredient in antiseptic mouthwash. They're what hospitals use to sterilize surgical equipment. They're molecular assassins. When phenolic smoke touches meat, these molecules don't bounce off. They penetrate the surface and bond with the proteins. Within hours, they've created an invisible barrier called a pellicle. This thin coating locks remaining moisture inside, while simultaneously blocking oxygen and airborne bacteria from entering. Your bacon has no pellicle. It has liquid smoke sprayed on for taste. That's not preservation, that's theater. But phenols do something even more lethal inside the meat itself. They migrate through the muscle fibers and attach to fat molecules. Fat normally oxidizes when exposed to air. That's what creates that rancid smell in old meat. Phenols block this reaction completely. That's why properly smoked meat from 2 years ago doesn't smell like rot. The chemistry of decay was neutralized before it could start. Then there's the acid. Wood smoke carries organic acids, primarily acetic acid, the same compound that makes vinegar sour. These acids lower the pH on the meat surface to around 5.0. Most bacteria prefer neutral environments, pH levels between 6.5 and 7.5. Drop them into a pH of 5.0 and their enzymes malfunction. Their cell membranes begin to deteriorate. But here's the genius part. Acid molecules are small. They slip through bacterial cell walls like ghosts through doors. Once inside, where the pH is still neutral, the acid molecule breaks apart and floods the interior with hydrogen ions. The bacteria now faces a crisis. It has to pump those ions back out or die. It burns all its energy trying to bail water from a sinking ship. Eventually, it exhausts itself. Game over. Your refrigerated bacon has none of this protection. The pH sits around 5.8, just acidic enough to slow some bacteria, but not enough to kill them. And because there's no smoke penetration, no phenolic barrier, and no osmotic pressure from proper salting, the organisms living on your bacon are just waiting. The moment you break that plastic seal, they wake up. Modern food scientists call this the hurdle effect. Each preservation method creates a barrier. Salt removes water, smoke adds phenols and acid. Drying concentrates everything. Alone, each barrier slows decay. Combined, they build a fortress nothing can breach. Neanderthals didn't understand microbiology. They couldn't measure pH or water activity, but they understood results. Meat treated this way lasted. Meat that wasn't treated rotted. Natural selection applied to food storage. The groups that figured this out survived winters. The ones that didn't starved. Now watch what happened after 6 weeks in that smoke-filled cave. The deer strips had transformed. They'd lost 30% of their original weight. The exterior was nearly black, hard as leather. The smell was intense, woody, salty, nothing like fresh meat. But slice into that strip and the interior was deep red, firm, and completely safe. The water activity had dropped to 0.85. At that level, nothing grows. Not bacteria, not mold, not yeast. The meat had become chemically hostile to life itself. They could hang those strips in a cool, dry corner of the cave and forget about them for months. 6 months later, when snow buried the landscape and hunting became impossible, they'd cut off pieces and eat them. No cooking required, though heat made them more palatable. No sickness, no spoilage, just protein that had been locked in time through salt and smoke. Compare that to your bacon. Day 7 in the refrigerator, still sealed, it's already approaching its limit. The added water is supporting bacterial colonies you can't see yet. Pseudomonas species are multiplying on the surface. Lactobacillus is producing acid that'll soon create that sour smell. The moment you open that package, you've started a countdown. 48 hours, maybe 72 if you're lucky, before slime appears. Your $6 premium bacon has a shorter functional lifespan than meat preserved by people who didn't know germs existed. But here's what really happened after World War II that killed traditional preservation: the cold chain. In the 1960s, refrigeration became universal. Every truck, warehouse, and store had coolers. If you could keep meat cold from slaughter to table, you didn't need to preserve it. You could sell it wet, fresh, and profitable. Traditional curing took 6 to 8 weeks. Injection took 6 minutes. A machine with 40 needles could process an entire ham in under 60 seconds. And that injection did something beautiful for profit margins. It added weight. A 10-pound ham could become 12 pounds overnight. Every pound of water sold at meat prices was pure profit. The industry called it enhancing. What they actually enhanced was their bottom line. You're paying for their efficiency, not your benefit. And now you're standing in your kitchen wondering why that bacon you bought 4 days ago already smells off. So, what can you actually do about this? Because complaining about industrial food processing doesn't put better bacon on your table. First, understand what you're buying. Real dry-cured bacon exists, but you won't find it at most grocery stores. Look for country ham or artisan producers. The label should say dry-cured specifically, not wet-cured or brine-cured. Check the ingredients: salt, maybe sugar, sometimes spices. That's it. If you see water listed, walk away. If sodium phosphate appears anywhere, keep walking. These products cost more, sometimes double. A pound of real dry, cured bacon runs $8 to $12 instead of $5. But here's the difference: that expensive bacon isn't padded with water. You're paying for actual meat that's been properly processed. When you cook it, minimal shrinkage occurs. No white foam, no pool of liquid in your pan, just rendered fat and crispy meat, and it lasts. Properly dry-cured bacon keeps for months in your refrigerator. Some varieties last a year or more. You're not racing against a 7-day clock anymore. Second option, make it yourself. This sounds intimidating until you realize how simple the process actually is. You need pork belly, salt, and thyme. That's the foundation. Pink curing salt, also called Prague powder number 1, prevents botulism. You can order it online. It's not optional if you're curing at home. The process is straightforward. Weigh your pork belly. Use 2% of that weight in salt. For a 5-pound belly, about 3 ounces. Mix your salt with a small amount of pink curing salt, following package directions carefully. Rub this mixture over every surface of the meat. Pack it in a non-reactive container. Glass works, food-grade plastic works. Put it in your refrigerator. Every 2 days, flip the meat. Drain any liquid that accumulates. After 7 days, rinse it thoroughly under cold water. Pat it dry. Now you're at a decision point. You can slice and cook it immediately, or you can take it further. For true preservation, you need to dry it. Wrap the cured belly in cheesecloth and hang it somewhere cool and dry. A basement works if it stays between 50 and 60 degrees. A spare refrigerator with the door slightly open works. Let it hang for 2 to 4 weeks. The meat will lose 15 to 20% of its weight. The exterior firms up. The fat turns slightly translucent. This is what creates shelf stability. You've dropped the water activity low enough that bacteria can't colonize. Want to add smoke? Cold, smoke it. Keep temperatures below 80 degrees. Use hardwood like oak, hickory, or apple. 8 to 12 hours of smoke exposure deposits those protective phenols. What you end up with bears little resemblance to supermarket bacon. It's harder, darker, intensely flavored. Slice it thin. The taste is concentrated, salty, complex. This bacon doesn't need refrigeration if kept dry. Weeks at room temperature, months in the fridge. You've built something that resists decay through chemistry, not cold. Third option, reduce your reliance entirely. Medieval people ate preserved meat because they had no choice. You have alternatives. Fresh meat cooked immediately doesn't need preservation. Freezing, while not traditional, actually works for short-term storage without the chemical load of modern curing shortcuts. The real lesson isn't that you need to live like a Neanderthal. It's that industrial food processing made choices that benefit manufacturers, not consumers. They optimize for speed and profit margins. Your health and the quality of your food became variables they were willing to sacrifice. Every time you buy bacon, pumped full of water and chemicals, you're voting for that system. Every time you seek out properly made food or make it yourself, you're voting against it. Look at what they took from us. Neanderthals developed preservation techniques so effective that meat lasted months without refrigeration. Medieval farmers refined these methods over centuries. Sailors crossed oceans eating provisions that stayed safe for half a year. Then, in 50 years, we threw it all away for convenience and cheap production costs. Now we're dependent on an unbroken cold chain from slaughter to table. One power outage, one logistics failure, and your food becomes dangerous within hours. We traded resilience for efficiency. We traded knowledge for convenience. We traded food that lasted for food that expires. The technology to preserve meat for months using nothing but salt and smoke isn't lost. It's just buried under decades of industrial optimization that prioritized everything except the end product's quality and your ability to store food safely. That Neanderthal in his cave, working by firelight, packing deer meat in salt he'd traded for or extracted from deposits himself, understood something fundamental. Food is chemistry. Control the water, control the pH, control the environment, and you control decay. He couldn't explain the science, but he knew the results. Your supermarket bacon, engineered in laboratories, processed in factories, optimized by food scientists, spoils faster than meat, preserved by someone who thought thunder was angry gods. That should tell you everything you need to know about who really understands food preservation. The answer is waiting in methods we abandoned: salt, smoke, and the patience to let chemistry work. The secret to meat that survives months isn't locked in a laboratory or a factory. It's in salt, smoke, and time. 3 elements that cost almost nothing but require something modern food production refuses to give. Patience. Your bacon rots in 5 days because someone decided speed mattered more than durability. Neanderthal venison lasted 6 months because survival didn't allow shortcuts. Choose accordingly.